Hi, I'm Matt Tacker. I'm a licensed architect and certified city planner and practice urban design. The purpose of these videos is to teach some basics around graphic communication, especially for city planners, but I think these tips will be useful for anybody who's an aspiring designer. Uh, Graphic communication includes looking at plans, being able to depict places, communicating a sense of terrain, also drawing good diagrams. All of those kinds of things, I think, will be enhanced by the things that I'm going to go over. Um, I also think, I also want to emphasize that it's important to develop some hand drawing skills. Computer drawing offers a lot of things, but it can be very constraining, particularly for the emerging student. Uh, And then finally, I want to emphasize more than anything, don't get hung up on everything that I'm going to go over. It's most important just to get it down, just to express things as best you can. So let's get started. So the first lesson is about drawing lines. And there's two basic tools, of course. There's a pen, there's a pencil. Let's talk a little bit about each. You know, a pen has more intensity than a pencil. It tends to You can copy it on a photocopier and it'll show up a little better. A pencil is a little softer. It's also more forgiving in that you can erase mistakes. The other thing about lines is to know that you can use different pen weights and different uh, pencils to give emphasis to something. So let's say that you've got a grid of streets there and you want to give emphasis to one of the blocks. Okay, there you go. This is a thicker pen. This is a sign pen. It's one of my favorites. This medium weight pen is a Pilot, but there's a whole bunch of different kinds of pens you can get. Different brands. Here's Faber-Castell. You know, goes from fine point to broad. For pencils, uh, you can use a softer pencil to give more emphasis. And then the other thing is you can use a thin pen, or you can use a hard pencil if you want to just shade something. So as an urban designer, of course, a lot of the features that we draw are rectangles. So get accustomed to drawing parallel lines and fairly straight lines. Uh, an experienced draftsperson will be able to draw straight and fairly parallel lines just pretty much as a matter of course. But the beginner, you know, it's okay to use a straight edge. This is an architect's triangle. That's an option. Um, you know, everyone's going to have to buy a scale to measure things. You know, a scale makes a very good straight edge as well. Um, you can do parallel lines by just doing both sides of the scale, for instance. This is kind of a cool tool. This is a rolling ruler, which you can draw parallel lines pretty easily without having to purchase a parallel rule, which is kind of an expensive piece of equipment. So that's a nice one to have. And often these things come with circle templates, um, something where you can draw circles as well. So let's draw some shapes. Uh, there's squares, of course, circles. You can put two circles kind of together to create an oval. You can make an asterisk, which is a cross in one direction and then an offset cross 45 degrees in another direction. Those are just among the kinds of shapes that you're going to be using. And then there's features that you're going to want to show. There are trees. That's a plan view of a tree where you can sort of see the trunk below. Here it is looking at the side of it or in elevation. Cars, kind of a rectangle, but you know, you can also show the front and the back windshields. Here is a car with its tires underneath and the front windshield showing. Okay. Shrubs. Shrubs can be as simple as a circle, but let's say this is the ground here. We want to give it some more interest. You could just kind of go around something and give it as a little zigzag, and it'll look more like a shrub. We can go back to this tree and we can give it kind of a little more interest too, by just being a little more zigzaggy. We can make that trunk thicker if we wanted to. So play around with it. The more you draw, the more you doodle during the day on a napkin, the easier it is going to be for you. So let's put what we just learned together in a short urban design problem. Okay, let's say that there is a street that comes into a T intersection, and just beyond the T intersection there's an important public building. You notice that I'm using a pencil for this, and I'm kind of drawing it lightly because I'm not really quite sure where I want things to go. I can go back in and I can emphasize things when I'm a little more confident of the line with a pen. Here's the building. Oh, that building isn't quite rectangular, so I'm going to move my dark line over here. And those are all medium weight lines, but wait a second, the building is perhaps the most important thing. Maybe this is a public building. So let's outline it with a fat pen. And let's make use of the fact that there is a vista here, that this building is centered on this street, so there's a vista, so there's a view where you can see the front door of that building. And let's put a tower right at the end of that vista. So we can also show landscaping. And if you've got a circle template, or if you're just, even if you do it by hand, here's a circle template. You can draw in your trees, or on this side of the street. I'm just going to try to do it by hand more. Okay, and let's pretend that the public building has a path, and then it's got landscaping on the sides and surrounding it. And a soft pencil can be a really great way of doing landscaping because it's a little softer. And I like to make kind of wiggly lines, when I do shrubs or something like that. And you can also give some texture with some stippling. So the next thing we're going to talk about is shading and color. And there's different shades of gray. From really dark, I'm going to use a soft pencil for the really dark gray here. Maybe a little harder pencil for medium gray. And then we'll use this hard pencil for light gray. You can also vary it just by how hard you press the pencil. I can turn this dark thing into a very dark thing just by pushing hard on it. Colors. So, a darker gray is going to give you more emphasis, generally, unless the overall image is dark, in which the light will stand out more. Colors. So, colors are a lot of fun to work with. A red will give more visual emphasis than, say, a blue. That tends to fall back. So colors are a lot of fun to work with. They're used two different ways for city planners. If you're illustrating a drawing, you can use the colors that you'd see in real life. But colors are also used in plan view to indicate land use. And there are color conventions for depicting the different land uses that you'd find within a city. And so what you see here is a legend of typical land use colors, starting with the more intensive land uses to the less intensive. Mixed use is a red but with a lot of gray in it. Commercial retail is a straight red. Commercial office and industrial is violet. Public buildings like city halls and schools, the convention is blue. Single-family homes is a light yellow. Multifamily homes like townhouses and apartments are orange and browns. Parks are typically depicted with a pretty true green. And then natural open space, you can use a different green. Here you see a green with a lot of blue in it. Obviously, we are drawing things much smaller than they are in real life. And the way that we keep things proportionally the same as in real life is we use a scale. And so here's an engineer's scale. Right here it's got 10 marks evenly spaced per inch. This is 1 inch equals 10 feet. Here's another one where it is 1 inch equals 20 feet. Alright, so now let's look at both of those and let's measure this tree that I drew. If I was using a 1 inch equals 10 foot scale, I'm going to measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tick marks. So that's 6 feet tall. That's more like a bonsai tree, perhaps. And then if I was using 1 inch equals 20, for instance, that tree might be drawn exactly the same way, but I count out the number of tick marks that I've got there, and I've got 12, so that's a bigger tree. Or then if I go to 1 inch equals 30, and measure up the tick marks, now I'm up to 18 feet, which starts to be the size of a street tree. A very versatile tool, however, paper-wise, is tracing paper. It's slightly see-through. This is white. It comes in yellow too. I really recommend the white over the yellow. This is a 12-inch roll. Doesn't cost a lot. I think it comes in bigger rolls, but a 12-inch roll will be fine for an emerging student. So why use tracing paper? Well, it's because you don't just sit down and draw the final design the first time. Tracing paper allows your design to develop, to evolve over multiple steps, okay? So let's just say that I want to draw a set of buildings that are along a main street. And here's the curb, and here's the building front, and I'm not sure, I mean, here's some buildings facing that sidewalk. Here's the sidewalk. And I decide that, you know, those buildings, they all look like they were built at the same time. Maybe I want the buildings to have more variety. So now I'm going to go over it again. Oh yeah, and I made the curb maybe a little bit too close to the buildings. I'm going to move the curb over. In front of the buildings along the main street, they stay the same. But now I'm going to start to play with maybe varying the size of the buildings as they come off the main street. Okay, and there you go. That starts to look good. Maybe I want to see, without committing myself, maybe I want to see what it looks like to have some street trees on there. So, okay, those are looking pretty good. But the buildings, I guess, don't get as much emphasis as I want them to have relative to the other features. So, let's get another piece of trace here. Okay, we've got the trees out here that I've drawn once, another piece of trace, and we're going to do, here's the curb, here's street trees. I get to draw the street trees a second time, which means they can be more perfect, or at least more to my liking. And you know what? The building really needs more emphasis. So here I'm going to go to my thicker pen, and I'm going to draw the outline of the buildings with a thick pen. So the buildings, which, by the way, are the things that you're going to notice most when you're standing there looking at stuff. Kind of outline the buildings, and then the separation between buildings, I'm going to keep that separation the lighter line weight. I can also use tracing paper to draw from other sources, not just my own drawing. So, you know, you can find a magazine and you can find a tree that you like there. This particular magazine has this shot of the Campanile in Berkeley, where I live. You know, maybe I have a design where I actually want to show a tower, and I would like the tower, maybe it's not as tall as the Campanile, but I'd like to have sort of a lot of the same ornamental features. I'm just going to draw right over that. And of course I'm a fairly experienced draftsperson, so you're not going to be able to do this quite as well or quickly. But that gives you an idea. So now you've got that, and you know, we could begin to invent something around it. You know, maybe it's within, maybe it's a kiosk within a park. Yeah. Tracing paper is also good if you want to draw something multiple times. For instance, you might draw the street trees once and then slide those street trees under other parts of your drawing. You can also reflect the image using tracing paper. So this is a main street with a sidewalk and a retail shops facing it. What if we want to show the other side of the street? Well, to do that, we're going to redraw these features, and I'm going to draw them kind of quickly and more sloppily. Okay. But now I can reverse it. Okay? And here we go. Now I'm going to draw this again. And there we go. We've got two sides of a main street. Voila. But labels are really important for telling the story. This is the main street that we looked at earlier. You know, you might recall that this was the sidewalk. Here I'll draw a car that's at the sidewalk. Here's the front of the buildings. And this is a big store. That's an anchor store. That is important for the economic life of the main street. So to draw the labels, it helps to just have a little bit of a guideline, and it can be done with like a blue pencil, or be done with a light pencil, but just give yourself a little guideline where you want to put the label. And here's sidewalk. And there'll be no grading on your hand lettering skills, but again, the labeling does help tell the story. Here are small shops. And then I told you that this anchor store is really important. So I'm going to use a thicker pen and give it more emphasis. And then of course I also forgot to write in the street. Okay. Another important concept in drawing is plan, elevation, and section. And so, you know, here's a house here. It's drawn in elevation. It means you're looking at the front face of it. You're not cutting through the building at all. It's as if you're standing there. It's not drawn in perspective. So all of the, you know, using your scale, everything's going to be the same scale in all directions, both along the X and the Y axis. Now let's draw that same building in plan. I'm going to use my trace because it's just such an easy thing to do. Now I know the building is going to be that thick, and here's it is in plan. I've drawn a front door there. That's where the front door is. That's where the front window is. I could fill in the other information, but that's basically in plan view, looking down at it, and you're cutting through the elevation. Another thing you can do is draw the same elevation in section. And so we're going to take the same elevation. And a section means you're cutting through the building somewhere. And without showing a lot of detail, we know that this is a two-story building. And we know that there's some front steps. So the floor on the inside is going to be flush with where the front steps are. And we also know that there's a floor upstairs. There's a second floor. So here is the same building in section. Let's take a look. There it is in section. Okay. So let's just sum up. Plan view. Of course, the walls are more than just a line thickness. We got plan views. I didn't work out all the detail on the plan. Here's elevation, and here's section. That's it. Drawing things in 3D. There's no obligation to draw things in 3D, but you might want to have a few pointers on how you go about doing it. One way to draw 3D is to draw from a photograph or draw from a drawing. This happens to be a rendering that an architect did on a project that I was involved in. I was the urban designer. I was trying to give the architect some advice after using several layers of trace to finally get to the final result. I gave him the advice to reinforce these kinds of features, and I did it by sketching right over his drawing. You can do that as part of your presentations also. I hope you found this video to be helpful. It offers you a lot of tips to get your ideas down as best as you can. Practice is going to make you better at it, but the most important thing is to have some fun with it. This is your chance to explore something new.